Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening. How you doing? Fade to Black. Today is Monday, August 19th, 2024. Let's do this, man. I just love saying that. I really do. We're kicking off another amazing week here on Fade to Black. And tonight, Giorgio Tsoukalos is with us. And tomorrow night, Tuesday, Joseph Selby is here. We're going to be talking about the Yugas. That's right. We're going to be going back into India. Deep conversation tomorrow night. And Wednesday, Charles Pellegrino is here. We're going to be talking about the Minoan phenomenon above ground and below the ocean and how that may connect to interstellar space travel. I know what you're thinking. How is that possible? We'll be doing that on Wednesday night. And then Thursday, Sheila Seppi is with us for the first time. We're going to be talking about walk-ins. I remember many years ago on the show, and it doesn't matter who the guest was or anything, but the subject came up about walk-ins. And I remember the chat and Twitter and just the subject, just the mention of it and everybody's interest in it, it blew me away. And so we're going to be doing that on Thursday night with Sheila Seppi. But tonight, it's all about Giorgio. He is here. I do have three major events coming up in the second half of 2024. First up, coming up in next week, in about a week and a half, is Contact at Sea, my cruise to Alaska. That is September 6th through the 13th. Links are below. Heading over to Egypt with Billy and Elizabeth Carson again this October 3rd through the 14th. Links for that below. Again, it is also sold out, but you can sign up for the waiting list and also for 2025. And then heading down to Peru and Bolivia with the great Brian Forrester, and that is November 15th through the 27th. Many years ago, the links for that are below too as well. It is also sold out, but there's a waiting list, and get signed up for that. Many years ago, I won't waste time tonight with Giorgio about this, but when I first met Giorgio, like the first time we met, and Ancient Aliens had just come out. It was back when it was a 2-hour show, and they featured Puma Punku and the H blocks. And that really, it was a big paradigm shift for me. And when I met Giorgio, it was in Studio City, and I brought up Puma Punku with him, and he had said then, and many times on this show, Puma Punku for him is one of the most significant places on planet Earth. When I finally got to Puma Punku last year, it wasn't the H blocks. It was Giorgio Tsoukalos that I thought about first walking through those gates. It's a true story. And if you want to have that same experience that I did, come and join us November 15th through the 27th. Now, I want to get straight to it. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. Our guest tonight is Giorgio Tsoukalos of Ancient Aliens. And we are going to be talking about, of course, Ancient Aliens, and I'm going to get into Giorgio's head tonight and see where he's at on things. And we're going to do a very brief recap of the 2024 Forbidden Conscious Awards in Miami that Giorgio hosted. I co-hosted. It was a lot of fun, and we'll get into that too as well. But Giorgio himself, very brief introduction. For over 20 years has been the director of Erich von Daniken Center for the Ancient Astronaut Research. Of course, he is the star and executive producer for the last 15 or so years of Ancient Aliens. Now, he's been on Nat Geo. He's been on the Sci-Fi Channel. Of course, Fade to Black and Coast to Coast and all the other international television and radio programs around the world discussing all of his theories. His websites are below, and I'm going to get straight to it. Giorgio, you promised me a pirouette. Where's the pirouette?
Something. There it is.
Yeah, there it is. How you doing, man?
Very good. How about you, Jimmy? Good to see you.
It's good to see you. And I don't know, I kind of thought about things, Giorgio, a little bit. And welcome back to the program. And I think everybody knows now from social media that you and I were just hanging out a couple of weeks ago in Miami. And it feels like it was yesterday. We'll circle back to that. But, I was thinking today of, I'm going to do this first. This is what I'm going to start with. You ready? Just for you, I broke out my Aliens Built Earth guitar.
All right.
Yeah,
pretty cool. Are you going to play us a tune as well?
Yeah, just for you. I've written a new theme for Ancient Aliens. Yeah, we'll do that a little bit later. Okay, so and I was thinking, out of all of the things that we have done together over the years, right? Just tons of stuff and shows and conferences and interviews and dinners and conversation. Where do I start with Giorgio? And I thought about this. So this is where we're going to start. All right. Hopefully it's something you've never heard before. Years ago, and you will remember the conversation, you and I were talking privately, and you said to me, Jimmy, let me stop you right there. I'm not a UFO researcher. And you remember that conversation, right? Okay.
Sure.
So now last week here in Palmdale, where I live by Skunk Works, and I saw a crazy sighting. I was out looking at the meteor shower, and there was some crazy stuff going on in the sky. The next night, I came on Fade to Black and said, hey, just want to tell everybody there was this thing last night, and it was and since then, this has blown up all over Twitter, the videos and the things, and about Palmdale and this crazy sighting. And so the question to you is, when you hear stuff like that coming from me, a friend, right? And we know each other really well. And when I see something, I see it. I'm not making it up. But then social media and the videos come out after that, and the post, Jimmy Church said, and Jimmy Church saw this too. Well, it says to me that something indeed is going on. Now, are you still not a UFO researcher? And when you hear reports like this coming from the public, what goes through your mind?
Look, of course, I am a UFO researcher, but my UFOs happened in ancient times. But at the same time, I try to draw a correlation, a connection to the stuff that is going on today. So yes, this was a conversation we've had a long time ago, and people over time do change. Look, everything that's been happening since December 2017, everything that's happened since has brought us closer to disclosure. In fact, I think we're in the disclosure process. So the fact that this thing just happened in Palmdale and that all these sightings happen left and right, of course, I am looking into those things and, trying to figure out, what is going on. The discussion that is happening today also, didn't really happen 10 years ago. So I think we live in the most exciting of times that, you no longer have to whisper if you want to talk about the phenomenon.
And you're right about that. And then I kind of stole a page from your playbook, if you don't mind. When I spoke about this on the air, I said, hey, I'm not saying it was aliens, right? but right, I don't know what it is. It could have been stuff being tested or whatever, but it's best maybe sometimes to just stay in the middle and then see where the cards fall, right? Don't necessarily jump to one conclusion very quickly.
Well, look, in my opinion, and I've never been shy about this, is that I think that the great majority of sightings, and I've stated this before, the great majority of sightings that we have today, in my opinion, are our advanced technology that we have not yet or has not yet been released to the public. But that does not include that 1 or 2% that is in the category other, and I am team other. We don't have answers to those, and to those sightings, and to suggest that all of these things are natural phenomena, or that they are the proverbial weather balloon and things like that, or swamp gas. Enough already with the swamp gas, enough already with the natural phenomena, because we can compare the two and they're not the same. And so I do think that some of what we are witnessing is ours, that's not been released yet to the public. But the other stuff, I still stay by what I've always said, that some of this stuff is absolutely not of this world. It is of extraterrestrial origin. And, I've actually also now embraced this idea that it could be interdimensional. I mean, if you would have talked to me about this 20 years ago, I'd have been like, no, not really. But the more I've learned, the more I know about this stuff, why not interdimensional? I mean, there's more about the world or the universe that we don't know. And to say that we have the answers to everything, that to me is, unscientific, because science is the path of investigation. And, I really do think it's important to question these things, but not everything. We now live in a post-truth world where you have people out there arguing that 2 + 2 is 5. And that's just ridiculous. 2 + 2, even on a distant planet somewhere, is 4. So there are certain facts that should not be changed or cannot be changed. But now we live in a world where some people are saying, 2 + 2 is 5 and things like that. And then you have other people like, oh, that's true. No, it isn't. So we live in very exciting, but also very strange times.
Now, I know I brought up Puma Punku in my intro with you, and I love telling that story because, first off, it's true, and but the second part of it is when you go to and let me say this for the audience, even though it got out there on social media, Giorgio and I went out to dinner a couple of weeks ago, and it was, I think we sat there for 4 or 5 hours, right? And just talked to the early hours in the morning.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, these subjects in the ancient sites around the world. And does Puma Punku still rate for you where it has in the past? Or are there other sites right now that are intriguing to you?
Personally, Puma Punku, as far as all the latest discoveries, still is number one, and then everything else is a distant second. Not necessarily a distant second, but Puma Punku is by far one of the most inexplicable places on Earth. And I'm really happy to let you know that the final episode of this season, we will have another Puma Punku episode, in which we are doing something that has never been done before. And that is, we have asked archaeological recreation experts to recreate Puma Punku for us. Now, this is something that's never happened before. We worked with an archaeologist, Dr. Alexei Vranik, and he has spent 10 years minimum at Puma Punku using geotelemetry, using 3D scanning, and the proverbial, notepad and pencil, measuring all the Puma Punku blocks that are located at the time. And he measured about 150 different pieces. There's 150 pieces that we can see. There's a whole bunch more, in the mud. It's as if some giant cataclysm, buried the place and ripped it apart. And so we've worked together with Dr. Vranek, and we were able to ask 3 other reconstruction artists that work as archaeological site recreators, and gave them the 150 blocks that were measured at Pumapunku. And you guys have to watch that episode. I just saw the fine cut a few days ago, and it's one of the best episodes we've ever done on Ancient Aliens. And I'm so proud of Prometheus Entertainment and everyone that's working on that show, because we have gone the extra mile on this particular episode. And I think it'll blow people away because it's never been done before. And, what we came up with, or what they came up with, is, very interesting. That's all. That's all I can say.
I can't wait for that. And what most people, and I understand why, the H blocks are very intriguing. I get that. I couldn't wait to see my first H block, right? And but when what most people don't understand, it's a very, very, very big site. We only see those shots, and I get that. When you walk the perimeter and you go, you do the full walk around, then you get a grasp of the entirety of the site. And the backside, which you were just referring to, when you're on the backside of Pumapunku, the H blocks and everything else, everybody's on the other side. But when you get around in the back and you see the steps, and obviously these stones were thrown, or there was something nuts happened and came through there, and it was big. I don't know if it almost looks like an explosion or something. I don't know. But to see the walls, how am I, Giorgio, I hope I'm explaining this right. When you walk down, everybody, and you come away from the H blocks, you're looking at very finely positioned walls, and it's a square, and it's beautiful. And then you walk around the back, and those walls that are beautifully constructed are taken apart and strewn, and the stones are all over the place, which would indicate to me something major happened there.
Yeah, I mean, so Pumapunku is about 500 yards southwest from Tiwanaku. Now, Tiwanaku is also a massive site, and they're very close to each other. First of all, we're at an altitude of almost 13,000 feet. So, the air is very thin. You get tired very quickly. It gets hot during the day, cold at night. And you have predominantly 2 types of stone there. You have the red sandstone and you have the gray andesite. And what's so interesting is that with the tools that have been found at Pumapunku, they found bronze tools, and they found copper tools, and also a little bit of iron tools as well. And what's so interesting is that the red sandstone, there's no doubt in my mind that you can cut those blocks with the copper and the iron and the bronze, because red sandstone is a soft rock. It is not very hard. But the gray andesite, out of which some of the platforms and some of the standing stones and also the H blocks that you just referred to, those are gray andesite. And it is impossible to cut the gray andesite blocks with copper or with bronze or even with iron. And so, we have to put on our thinking caps to ponder and ruminate, well, how was that done? How were those blocks cut? Because today we would use, high-tech milling tools to cut gray andesite, including, like I said, milling tools or water jets and stuff like that. Now, as far as the red sandstone blocks are concerned, yes, I just said that I agree that they were cut with, bronze and copper tools because they're soft. But what nobody is mentioning, and now you've been there, and by the way, I think I say this on your show every time we talk about Pumapunku. It should be on your bucket list. You have to go and experience it yourself. Nobody talks about that these red sandstone platforms, these blocks are ranging between 65 and over 100 tons, and they're long and flat.
And
In
precise.
fact, look, I have
and
a visual here. Check it out.
Let's see what
There
you
we
got.
go. So this is, one of the areas at Pumapunku. This is a picture from 1995, before they moved everything around. Because what also happened with that area is that the government has come in and basically rearranged everything, which was a valiant effort, but the reconstruction process isn't exactly accurate. It was an attempt, but it's not accurate. And so, the question then is, all right, so they were able to cut 75-ton blocks with copper and iron and whatever, and bronze, but how do you move 75 tons, at an altitude of almost 13,000 feet? Well, they suggest wooden rollers. Well, at an altitude of 13,000 feet, there are no big trees with which you could have used the wooden rollers. Now, just in case somebody's listening and say, "Oh, but I've been there. There are trees." Yes, there are trees, but they're bush-like. They're tiny. Their trunks are it's not nothing substantial. So you still have to ask those questions, because, in my opinion, a lot of questions have been answered, but not all of them. And the third question also is, and now you know this too to be true, you need planning, you need organization to create something like that. And everybody agrees that whoever built that place did not have any writing. Well, did they or didn't they? Because, how did they? You have to have a sort of a blueprint, how to cut these blocks, how to shape these rocks in order to make the final structure. And these are all questions that really have not been answered by the mainstream, which is fine. But I like to ask those questions.
Yeah. You go up to Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, and you look around, and trust me when I say there's modern buildings and there's some stuff scattered, but you look around and picture deep history. It's high. It's 13,000 foot high desert. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. There's nothing grows. And it's like being on the moon. Now, I wanted to ask you this, though. This is very important. Most people don't understand that a good NFL quarterback could probably throw a football from Pumapunku to Tiwanaku. It's right there. You go out of one parking lot and drive into the next, right? It's literally right next door to each other. But the archaeologists and the anthropologists, the locals there, will say that the two are not connected. And you just got to go, wait. So anyway, Giorgio, I wanted to ask you about this. On the back of the H blocks are those little carved, stepped, like T-shaped doorway things, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm photographing those, and I saw it at a Mauritius. You've seen it there. I've seen them in Egypt. You see them around that same T-shaped door thing. And so I go over to, and I'm listening to the dogma of these archaeologists, just blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, man, just let me do this on my own. So anyway, I'm in the back of Tiwanaku coming around. I'm walking down one of those paths, and you know what I'm talking about. It's a huge site. I'm going down a path, and there's a block sitting out there with holes drilled in the top. And so I was taking pictures of it. I walked around the backside of it. Guess what was carved on the backside of it? The exact same T-shaped door that's on the back of the H blocks. Not similar. And it was the same size, by the way. Identical. So I took a picture of that. I was like, huh. No, but yet they want to spread this dogma. If you can't see that kind of connection, then you're just blind to it and you don't want to admit to it, right?
Well, what my colleague and mentor, Erich von Daniken, proposed in his book, Twilight of the Gods, is this idea that Tiwanaku essentially was built as a place of worship of what may have happened at Pumapunku, because I agree that both of these sites, not only are they close by, but they're clearly connected somehow. And the connection is that Tiwanaku was built because of an event or events that happened at Tiwanaku, at Pumapunku. And so this to me is interesting because, we've also followed up on some of Dr. Arthur, the Austrian engineer, Arthur Poznansky, mining engineer, about, his idea that Pumapunku may date, or Tiwanaku in general, may date back to about 14,800 BC. And guess what? There are astronomical markers there set in stone that do correspond with a time of the night sky that has the constellations lining up to 14,800 BC. So, this is truly incredible that we have a site that potentially is 17,000 years old. And if anyone out there is now saying, well, this is an impossibility and it can't happen, I invite you to look directly over to Göbekli Tepe, where
okay,
Göbekli
stop. That's where I got to stop you, because that's where I was going next. I just rudely interrupted Giorgio.
That's
so before
fine.
you jump to Göbekli Tepe,
it's your show, Jimmy.
Oh, it's a good thing we're friends. Will you take my call tomorrow after this?
Sure. I always take your calls.
It's this. So at Tiwanaku, around the I'm off doing my thing, and Brian Forrester is doing his thing, and I'm off filming, and I round the corner and I come into this ceremonial pit that's got a pillar in the middle of it. And as I walk up, I shot lots of video. As I walk up to it, I'm looking, and it's frigging Göbekli Tepe. The belt buckle, the hands coming around on the side, and the the humanoid form carved into, and it's tall. It's the pillar I'm talking about.
Yes.
And I'm walking around this, and I'm looking at. I'm like, is anybody seeing what I'm seeing here? And the similarities are undeniable. Now, you just started to bring up Göbekli Tepe. What I saw at Tiwanaku, and for any anthropologist or archaeologist to look at the T-pillars at Göbekli Tepe and look at the two pillars, there are two there at Tiwanaku, and not notice the similarities between the two, I think they're doing humanity a disservice, because there's a connection.
Well, look, the thing is that unfortunately the mainstream doesn't agree with our findings, because none of us have a degree in archaeology. And you know what? That's okay. And I just wanted to briefly say that personally, as opposed to a lot of my colleagues, personally, I am not on a warpath with the archaeologists and the anthropologists, because, I actually appreciate their work. They're the ones that are breaking their backs out in the field and things like that. The difference is that our interpretation is a bit different. But to fault the archaeologists to suddenly, agree with us after, archaeology having been around for at least 100, 150 years with set parameters, that's okay, because everything, this whole thing is like UFO disclosure. It takes time. It's not a one night or overnight process. It'll never be a one-time press conference either, where they say, yep, okay, they're here, or we're not alone in the universe. And so we would not be able to do what we're doing without the archaeologists. So personally, I love the archaeologists. And the fact that they're upset by us, Let them, because sooner or later they will be on our side, because these things are amassing. We are gathering more and more info, because here's another thing that, for example, mainstream archaeology, when we discuss all this, the moment that you bring up, for example, the Fuente Magna Bowl, which is on display, and you probably saw it when you were in La Paz. The Fuente Magna Bowl is on display at the main museum of La Paz, which means it has been authenticated by the Bolivian archaeologists. It has been authenticated by South American scientists and archaeologists. And what does the rest of the world do? They still claim that the Fuente Magna Bowl is a fake. So in case you don't know, not you, Jimmy, but the audience, the Fuente Magna Bowl, you really should look it up, because it's an artifact that turns South American history upside down. Because in 1960, a farmer used a bowl that he had found somewhere to feed his pigs. And then a priest came through and he saw this bowl, and he recognized that this bowl had Proto-Sumerian script in it, and Sumerian, before they were writing in hieroglyph. So it was hieroglyphic script, and two types, a Proto-Sumerian and Sumerian, and it's all in there carved. And this thing was found buried in the ground. And so, because this was authenticated by the Bolivian government, here are other archaeologists, essentially from Europe and from America, or the Americas, well, the North America, saying, oh, the South American archaeologists, they don't know what the heck they're talking about, because the Fuente Magna Bowl is fake. Well, what an insult. See, we're always accused, us, that we are insulting the archaeologists, or we're insulting the human ingenuity of our ancestors. Well, it's all baloney. The archaeologists are insulting themselves by accusing, for example, the National Museum in La Paz in Bolivia, that their main object that is on display, that is not real. I mean, who is insulting whom here? And, so we have all these different pieces we have all these pieces of evidence that don't fall into that carefully constructed house of cards. And it's okay. I mean, look, for me, it's okay, because it takes time for everyone to come on board, and that is a slow process, but it'll happen. Because I mean, if you listen to some of these recent debates that were on some shows, I mean, it's two different brains talking, and they're not listening to each other, and then it escalates into name calling and calling people idiots and things like that. And that's no way of having a discussion or being smug about it, or, well, you're wrong. And instead of, well, let's have a civil conversation that is not snarky, that is not condescending, and not insulting. And everybody has lost their way of communicating with each other. We now think it's okay. Not us. I've been listening to you for many years, but everybody thinks it's okay to just go out there and insult everyone and call everybody names. So, I mean, that's not how you move forward,
No,
So
in the past, the intelligentsia of today should look at the past and understand how we got to where we are. And that was from intelligent thinkers that thought outside of the box. They didn't go with religion. They didn't go with the Vatican. They didn't go with the dogma. They presented ideas that were outside of the box, things that today we accept as fact and scientific, absolute laws of physics. And that's because, Isaac Newton thought outside of the box. Galileo and Copernicus thought outside of the box to the point of
Giordano Bruno was burnt at the stake for the
gave up his
truth.
life for the truth, and things that today we accept as fact. And now, if you're some intellectual, you don't think outside of the box, and that's the wrong view. And so, let me ask you this: because of, I think Ancient Aliens has a big part in this, but there's a lot of giants that came along too as well around Erich and yourself and Ancient Aliens and the cast. But the world has watched Ancient Aliens and has agreed with it. Not the ideas presented, but to ask questions. That's the success of Ancient Aliens. Everybody's had this stuff on their minds. And so those that are skeptics, they are a very small percentage. The rest of the world is like, it's not what you've been teaching us, right? And Ancient Aliens has a big play in that, doesn't it?
Well, I've often said that first of all, the show would not be on the air still if we would not have our watchers, our viewership. So thank you for everybody that's tuned in over the past 15 years. Without you, the show would not still be on the air. So, but at the same time, I think, well, you're right, Jimmy, that the show has struck a chord with audiences about, the ultimate quest, finding out the origin of humankind, finding out, where do we come from? Why are we here? And also, where are we going? I mean, those are the tenets of the original intro back in the day before we changed it to the current intro. Those are those questions, And so, and the reason why the show has worked too, let's be honest, is Kevin Burns' vision, where he said that, we're going to create a show where the experts in our fields get to speak without, being edited left and right. And we will not have the skeptics come in and, tear everything down. Because his argument was always, will you ever see a story on the nativity and then some skeptic comes in and says at the end, well, all of this never happened. And so that is the approach that Kevin took with Ancient Aliens. And so, here's the other thing that we've had so far: over 300 academics, professors, archaeologists, anthropologists, from universities and from the realm of academia and research that have appeared on Ancient Aliens and have, given their opinion. None of these people were forced to do so. They all came on the show quite voluntarily, and they were happy to discuss the show. And we do not hide when a producer contacts an interview subject or a person that we wish to interview. We do not hide who we are. We say, hello, this is Ancient Aliens. So all these 300 plus academics and teachers and professors that have appeared on our show, they're all wrong. They're all wrong to appear on Ancient Aliens. No, they're not, because I've told you this, Jimmy. I cannot tell you how many times, with a dinner that we had a couple of weeks ago, or just, hanging out at the bar somewhere having beers, I cannot tell you how, and this has happened to you too, how many people that are employed as academics, whether they're professors or whether they are, with a tenured position or something like that, they might not come forward publicly to agree with us. But I can't tell you how many times, you know what, Giorgio, you guys are on the right track. And so that's all I need. And I don't need to go out there personally to reveal anybody's name. Knowing from those people that what we're doing, that we are barking up the right tree, that's all I need.
Yeah, I was, I'll make this really brief. I was in New York. I'm filming for A&E History Channel, right? I'm in New York, and my driver, my SUV limo driver, whatever you want to call him, he goes, "Man, I'm so excited that I'm driving you." I said, "Okay, cool. All right, that's cool. All right." He goes, "Because I'm an Egyptologist." I said, "Really?" He goes, "I went to school in Cairo. I was out in the fields. I was digging. I was, and I said, 'Oh, what are you doing here?' And he said, Giorgio, I'm going to paraphrase, but I'm going to quote him. He goes, 'I started digging up the truth, and I started to question things, and they didn't like it, and I couldn't support what I was doing over there anymore, and I wanted to come here to the States and start my career over.'" That's exactly what he said. And you've been to Egypt enough. You go around and you talk to these guys and women that they publicly they say one thing, they've got a script. I get that. They do. But they'll pull you aside and go, "There's some strange stuff happening the truth will be revealed." Do you feel that same shift in academia? Is it easier for you guys to go and reach out to intellectuals now?
Absolutely. And speaking of Egypt, and I have not been shy about revealing this story. In fact, I've revealed it a couple of times, but this is the truth. I, in 2018, went to Egypt, and for Ancient Aliens, we filmed a 2-hour special with Rami Romani, the television producer and Egyptologist, and he has become a great friend of mine. But he was able to get Dr. Zahi Hawass to participate in our episode. And what was so fascinating is that when the cameras stopped rolling, that Zahi Hawass came up to me and he said, and this is, I have witnesses, this happened. And so I took that to heart, what he said. And he said, "Look, all you guys talk about how Egypt, is much older. You talk about how there used to be a golden age, 12,000 or so BC, when the gods, still mingled among human beings, and that they were, living together." And then he said something very interesting, and he said, "I, Dr. Zahi Hawass, would be the biggest idiot on the planet if you were right, if I were to deny your findings. Because if he, Zahi Hawass, could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that his country does indeed go back to 12,000 BC, 12,500 BC, then he said, I would be an idiot not to agree with this." And then he said, "But the forensic evidence that you are giving me is not enough." And not just me, but just all of us, he kind of lumped us all into the same pot. And that gave me pause to think about, because here is that man who just asked for more forensic evidence. Forensic means it's tangible. It is not, a flight of fancy, but it is tangible evidence that you can touch. And so that actually, lit a fire under my bum, because that means that the guy, especially Zahi Hawass, who was the supreme leader of the Antiquity Council of Egypt, for him to say, "I want you guys to be correct," that was a game changer for me. Unfortunately, he doesn't say that often. I mean, he used to call any and all of us pyramidiots. He hasn't done that in a while.
No, he hasn't. He hasn't.
So I really do think, because especially with this idea of Göbekli Tepe, why would it be so aberrant or wrong to think, well, maybe the people of Göbekli Tepe were in contact, or in quite frequent contact, with at the time existing pre-Egyptian civilization.
What's wrong
I mean,
with that idea? There's
and by
nothing
the
wrong
way,
with that idea.
and by the way, a pre-Egyptian civilization, just so everybody hears it from me, they're still Egyptian, okay? So the Inca or the pre-Inca, they're still Inca. It's not like, so this whole idea that this is sort of, insulting and things like that, why? Because the evidence is there. And so, I think we are in that paradigm shift, not only for UFO disclosure and things like that, but also I think in historical stuff that I don't want to. I mean, Graham Hancock says always, stuff keeps getting older, and that is exciting. It should not be. We should not be shying away from this. Just like we just found that altar stone at Stonehenge is not from England, but it's from Scotland.
That's a big
hundreds
deal,
and
man.
hundreds of miles away. That's all exciting stuff.
That's a big deal from Orkney, of all places, right?
Yes.
467 miles north of Stonehenge. And that thing weighed 6 tons. So,
Right.
Okay, before we get sideways on that, and you're right, that was tremendous
And
news.
by the way, England is not Holland. Holland is flat. England is very hilly with a lot of streams, with a lot of lakes. Also Scotland, obviously. See, it's challenging terrain. Archaeologists, again, I love them. They're not engineers. They're not construction workers. And every time that I show my lectures, that I show pictures of Pumapunku, there are the construction people in the audience who later come up to me and they're like, yeah, you know what? We could do this, but we would use modern machinery. We would use sophisticated, flatbed trucks and things like that. And at some point, the rope and pulley thing, it just falls apart.
Yeah, it completely
That's
falls
okay,
apart.
by the way. It's okay.
I wanted to ask you about this because you and I have been to these sites, and you're right. The older that it gets, the bigger it gets, and the more sophisticated that it gets. It's like backwards. It's the opposite of our way of thinking. But everywhere you go, whether it's Peru or Bolivia or Egypt, no matter where, Baalbek in Lebanon is one of the greatest examples, is that the older you get, the bigger it gets and the more sophisticated. When you go to the top of Ollantaytambo, right, and you climb those stairs and you go to the top to the Sun Temple and you see those 6 ginormous blocks that are, just, I don't know what are 20 feet tall, 8 feet wide, and they're there. And then you look down the stairs, right? You look down to the town and you look at the stones and you're like, no, I don't know how this happened, but it's not the way they are telling us. And you see that all over the world, don't you?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Ollantaytambo, because Ollantaytambo, has impossibilities that we today would have a hard time replicating. I mean, earlier you mentioned at Pumapunku, these inside cuts with inside cuts with inside cuts, like almost like an infinity mirror situation with slope lines and things like that. And at Ollantaytambo, there are 2 areas where you can see as if the square, the rectangle of the rock had just been cut out and pulled out. Well, how is that possible? Because there is no access point to the back. There was no blade or something that went down the back. So how is it done? And then at Pumapunku, at Ollantaytambo too, when you go to the back entrance of Ollantaytambo, what they call or refer to as the Temple of the Condor, there is a circular, which way am I going here? A circular
Concave
cut of the bedrock. And if you go and look at the bottom, there's a crisscross, a perfect lattice that has just been cut into the ground or into the stone. And, nobody from the mainstream really has explained how that was done, why. And the one explanation that I've heard is, oh, it's the water freezing technique, where, the water freezing technique has been used to freeze stone from bedrock by, drilling in the holes and then pouring water in there and then hoping overnight that it would freeze. And thus, when the ice expands, it essentially rips or tears the rock apart. And that has been done, but not at Ollantaytambo, because any water freezing technique does not necessarily give you a perfect straight cut. And at Ollantaytambo, also at Pumapunku, for example, we have these straight grooves, some that even have drill holes in them that are equidistant. And that is all done in andesite or in basalt. So how were the holes drilled in order to pour in the water that froze the thing, if that's even the case? And I am making my argument right now that that's not how it was done. Something else happened. I mean, at Ollantaytambo, that crisscross section, in my opinion, is a signature of some type of a high-powered machine.
Yeah, and the same. This is where I kind of lose my mind a little bit in frustration. But the same circular holes that you see cut in hard stone, be it granite or andesite or whatever, in Central and South America, these perfect holes, and then you go over to Egypt and you see these perfect holes, perfect round drilled holes, and they want to say that this was done at 4,500 years ago. Now wait a minute, we have to really stop and think about what they are trying to get us to believe. That doesn't make any sense to me when you look at that, because I've drilled holes. I have power tools, Giorgio. I know how difficult it is. And then you see this, and you can see the cut, you can see the wheel, you can see it, and it's like, wait a minute, it doesn't make any sense. And so the question for you is, when we look at from Saqqara to Giza, just that area, right? From Saqqara to Giza, where you have numerous, not one, not two, not three, dozens of pyramids that were built in just a 75-year period. This is what they teach us. Go to Wikipedia. It's right there, right? In a 7,500-year period, where these ginormous, the Red Pyramid, the Bent Pyramid, the Giza Plateau, everything else, that the population of Egypt wasn't large enough to support that kind of large-scale construction, public construction. They didn't have the population to do that. They only want to focus on the Great Pyramid, 20,000 people, 20 years. But Khafre was built at the exact same time. So it was double, right? And it just doesn't make any sense that they didn't have the population. The only thing that would support that idea is that it was built over a longer period of time, and it wasn't built in that concentration of 100 years at 2700 BC.
Well, I mean, they even found a papyrus, and that was part of our 2018 Egypt special. That papyrus actually did reveal that the Egyptologists, until fairly recently, were wrong by 100% in the building time of the Cheops pyramid, because it was double the amount of time. And even if it was, and that is a big deal, that we found this other document. So, I think that archaeology, or especially also Egyptology, the fact that this papyrus has come out, it's been translated, and sure enough, it says in that text that the pyramids are older or double the age of what the mainstream Egyptology suggests. The fact that that is not, that not many people know about this only illustrates how difficult it is for people to get excited about archaeology and Egyptology. And so I'm very proud that we have cracked the code in getting people excited about archaeology, because we at least ask questions and we deliver the receipts. When we say that the pyramids were built in a much longer construction time than what was accepted so far, we brought the receipts of that papyrus in which it says, no, they were actually built in double the time, so much longer than we assumed so far. That means, and this is just a fact, that Egyptology in that particular case was wrong 100%. So, and by the way, to repeat, it's okay that they were wrong. I mean, to me, research and science and investigation is twofold. It can go very, very good, or it can be very concise and very well, but then sometimes you come to a dead end, or there is a split in the road or a fork in the road, and you have to decide, well, which way am I going down? And we clearly now have to go down the other avenue, because of that papyrus, which has been authenticated, not by people like you and I, but by Egyptologists that are in Cairo and in Egypt. Well, I mean, this should be something that should be on the front pages of newspapers around the world, that, hey, ladies and gentlemen, the pyramid actually was not built in 23 years, but 46 minimum years. And that, by the way, is significant. How that is not, how that didn't go more into circulation around the world, it's strange to me. But we already have the proof that the pyramid was not built in the 20 years that they say it was.
Yeah, and the other big step that should have been shouted, from the mountaintops was I'm going to use the word dogma again, Giorgio, for just to repeat myself. But it was that the accepted norm in universities and texts that has been taught all around the world is that there was nothing before Giza and nothing before Sumer. Mesopotamia, Egypt, 3000 BC max. Nothing else to see here. Keep moving. And then Göbekli Tepe surfaces, and it wasn't before 3000 BC by a week or 100 years, but 7,000 years.
Yeah.
Right? Shouldn't that have been the biggest news in history? And everybody wanted to just push that, including Zahi Hawass, as you know, I'm not bagging on Zahi, but to quote him, "What is this Göbekli Tepe you speak of?" I know not about this Göbekli Tepe. Of course he knew, right? But here it predates by 7 millennia, man. That's a big deal.
But I think it's also important to give credit of this development to the archaeologists and the anthropologists, because when that shepherd walked across that terrain in Egypt, in Turkey, in 1989, 90, whatever it was, and one of his sheep fell into a hole, and he had to go and rescue his sheep. He pulled out this sheep, and he was like, wait a second. Why do I see artifacts down here? Why do I see a worked stone over here that seems to be, cut? And so what did they do? They called in the cavalry of archaeologists, and they realized fairly quickly, wait a second, there really is something down there that has been artificially buried. And that is how the archaeologists concluded that this place is from 12,000 BC, because they were able to use their tried and true procedure of doing their archaeological work, which means to be in the sun 10 hours a day and stone by stone, level for level, strata for strata, uncovering what they find. And they had no other choice but to conclude the age, because as they went deeper, that's when they found the organic material, ash, bones, textiles, all those different things that they were able to carbon date. They didn't carbon date stone. Anyone that tells you that they're carbon dating stone and it gave an old age, run for the hills. You cannot carbon date stone. It's impossible. Don't listen to the idiots out there who say that you can carbon date stone. I mean, it's nonsensical. And so the archaeologists were able to prove that Göbekli Tepe really dates back to that time. And that, to me, illustrates that they're really not the harbingers of censorship, because otherwise they would have never allowed, if it were that case, to agree that Göbekli Tepe is at least from 12,000 BC. This is highly, highly exciting. And, again, our interpretation is different, because the archaeologists don't really ask, well, then, who were the builders? Well, yeah, it was present day, whatever you would consider present day Turks back then, because it's the area of Turkey, whatever it may have been called back then, It
was the Armenian highlands, too. That's the other part. It wasn't Turkey. It was the Armenian highlands. It was the Armenian highlands. It wasn't. Turkey is only 600 years old.
Of course. Well, that's what I'm saying, but
right.
But of course, Turkish people should take pride and should be proud that this is on their, territory, on their geographical territory right now. I mean, embrace it. So that's just how it was the ancient Egyptians. Zai even said, I would want people to know that Egypt is much older than what we are suggesting. He wants this. He just said, hey, the forensic evidence, the tangible evidence, it's not good enough for me. And not to repeat myself, but I am going to, that illustrates that behind the doors, they are listening to us, but they're saying, okay, give us the tangible evidence. And if somebody says that me talking about myths, that is not part of their forensic process of accepting this, then I have to stand back. I have to defer to them and say, okay, that is your choosing. You don't think that mythologies and legends are part, as we think, that is part of the research, then, I have to defer to this. Because who am I to say that you must listen to this? I'm not here to fight with anyone. If people don't think that combining the two, the legends and the mythologies with some of this ancient stuff, that is not tangible evidence, that's your choice.
That's
it
ignorance.
Clearly is tangible evidence to us. So
now let me ask you this really quick, which is what is on everybody's mind. So let me get inside of your head for a second. Everything is taught. Nothing is new. Everything is taught. You may expand on the idea, like science, right? It's nothing but a series of corrections, but everything is taught. So when we look at something like Göbekli Tepe, somebody taught them how to quarry. Somebody taught them about agriculture. Somebody taught them how to, that was, who is doing the teaching here at all of these sites around the world? And it's a very consistent engineering process and quarrying process. There seems to be a progenitor. Who's doing the teaching?
Right. And I'm so happy that you brought that up, because that is like the thing that I have talked about the most, that, especially in a case like Göbekli Tepe, where all of a sudden, out of the Stone Age, essentially, all of a sudden we know how to quarry and carry and move about and mill stones that are, 20 feet high and things like, and many tons heavy, because for anything you need, and this is what's taught, another thing that's taught, that you need an evolutionary process of, or there should be an evolution in technology, where you start out with smaller blocks, And then as you succeed with this, you use bigger and bigger blocks. But the bottom line is, and this is worldwide, that the older it gets, the older a site is, the more megalithic, the more bigger the stones are. And logically, it should be the other way around. Because the first, I mean, it's as if we're all looking at, Lamborghinis or Ferraris in ancient times. But the first car ever was a Model T. It was not a Ferrari. It was not a Ford. I mean, obviously the Model T was a Ford, but it was not a sophisticated car. It was, the beginnings of a car. And if you think that the pyramids are the Model T, then I cannot help you, because it's clearly a Ferrari. It's clearly a Lamborghini. It is at the height of this non-existing evolutionary or evolution in technology. And so what the ancient astronaut theory has always proposed is that our ancestors were visited by the same teachers. And those teachers were flesh and blood extraterrestrials who descended from the sky and taught our ancestors on every continent, not just in Egypt or in Africa and in South America. The entire Greek pantheon of gods, everything that happened in ancient times in Greece, are all memories and remnants of physical extraterrestrials. Those were the so-called gods, lowercase g. And so to say that all these ancient stories of our ancestors, that they are nothing else but fantasy because our ancestors couldn't distinguish between reality and fantasy, that to me, ladies and gentlemen, is insulting the intelligence of our ancestors, because they knew exactly what they were talking about and what they wrote down, sometimes just in pictures, in petroglyphs, but they wrote this stuff down. Why? Because it so blew their mind that they had to commemorate it somehow, because they were thinking already back then, saying, if we don't commit this either in our oral traditions or in our written traditions, nobody in the future will believe us. And here we are, not believing them. And it's all there.
Yeah, Gobekli Tepe and, well, Pumapunku too, as well. The dating of this clearly suggests that somebody was teaching very fundamental things, not only about terra firma, how to quarry, right angles, how to carve, squares, construction, but also of the stars, because this stuff was astronomically aligned and level, and to know what true north is, and to have angle and level. But yet academia wants to say it was hunter-gatherers in the desert. They came out, they were wearing animal skins. And you know what? You're not giving them enough credit. It's
well, well, here's also the thing that, so we've always proposed that our ancestors at some point, and worldwide, globally, not just, like I just said, in Africa or in South America, but globally, that extraterrestrials taught them different scientific disciplines. And so, this idea somehow has become controversial. But I wonder why. Because first of all, our ancestors, that's exactly what they're saying, that they were the recipient of this knowledge, and they were very, very thankful for it, by the way. Just give you a quick example. On the Elgin marbles of the Parthenon in Greece, in Athens, that are now in England, there are entire panels that show how goddess Athena taught the Greeks how to cultivate the olive, how to make olives edible, and how to create olive oil. And that it was a staple. And to this day, it's a staple around the world, and especially in Greece. We still love olive oil in all our foods. We love olives on all our salads. But here's the thing. Anyone that's ever gone to an olive tree and picked an olive, beautiful, big, fat olive, and tried to eat it, you immediately spit it out because they're not edible. Olives have to be cultivated before they can be eaten, or they have to be processed. And so at the Parthenon, one of the reasons why that magnificent building was built is to give thanks to goddess Athena, who imparted this knowledge to the ancient Greeks that this is how it was done. To suggest that the ancient Greeks just created that story as a legend or a myth so that people have something to talk about, that to me is insulting, because they went through the sweat and blood of creating these magnificent carvings, and in the ancient Greek writing system, writing down that this is what happened at this particular place. In fact, one of the oldest olive trees that exists on Earth is at the Parthenon. It's one of the oldest olive trees that exists, thousands of years old. And so, here we have tangible evidence, that somebody came and taught the ancient Greeks how to make olive oil. But to suggest that that happened in real life somehow is controversial. And so I ask you, the first time that you appeared in front of your radio board, your sound board, did you just immediately know what was going on? Or did you have another sound person, an engineer or somebody, explain to you how that works? Now, is that insulting? Did I just insult your human ingenuity that you, Jimmy, once were taught a long time ago how to work the soundboard? None of us walk into any job and immediately know what we're doing. We have to be taught. So this idea that everything back then began in a vacuum, it's completely illogical, but somehow it's controversial. If those teachers or those professors, let's shut down all universities and all schools, and let's see how we're doing. If we can figure it out all up, through thin air.
The debate about Göbekli Tepe, you're not giving ancient man enough credit. Just stop with that. You are not giving things credit, and you're not thinking with an open mind. Now, one last question. Giorgio has to get on a plane, everybody, and Giorgio, you tell me when you're ready to go. Okay? Yeah. Is this, how many times does the world need to hear from a culture on any continent that their ancestors came from the stars, that the information came from the heavens, that it came from up there? It has been repeated over and over again. It has been carved in stone. It has been written in stone. It has been documented. It is an oral tradition of every culture on this planet. How many times do we need to hear that they were taught and the information came from somewhere else?
I think it even gets better than that, because not only is your observation 100% correct, but here's the other thing. So you're referring essentially to this magnitude of ancient archaeological sites, many of which have been built in the form of certain celestial constellations. And out of all the monuments around the world, I think 90% that are shaped in the form of constellations, it's Sirius, Orion, and the Pleiades. Those three. Well, if this old agreement or argument that, our ancestors were fantastic observers, which they were the most amazing observers of nature. They were the most amazing observers of the sky and the stars. I mean, the powers of observation of our ancestors was impeccable. I mean, they were way better at that than we are today, because they lived in nature. They better knew what was going on in their surroundings. But now the question I have is in reference to what you just asked. Why then, if they had so much time, which they did, to observe the night sky, why then, out of the thousands of constellations that they were able to build on Earth or recreate as a constellation site on Earth, why did they only always pick by and large, of course, there are other constellations, but I'm talking about majority now. Sirius, Orion, and the Pleiades. Why? Well, that is where these extraterrestrials came from. Imagine us 500 years from now in the future, and we arrive somewhere on a planet, and we encounter some type of intelligent life. But that intelligent life has not yet figured out how to make fire or how to do proper agriculture or, or build stuff, maybe some huts or something. What will we do? Will we just stand back, take notes, and then, fly on again to the next planet? Well, before we do so, we will teach them a couple of things in the basics of science, mathematics, agriculture, engineering, writing styles, medicine, healing, all those different things. And then we'll move on. But before we move on, we want to make sure that our once physical visit will be remembered on that planet. How will we do it? Well, we'll ask our newly acquired friends, help us build gigantic megalithic structures, and we'll create them in one type, in the form of one constellation. Which constellation? Our solar system. So that 10,000 years in their future, somebody will ask the question, well, why do we have all these ancient sites that are in the form of our solar system? Is it possible that that is where our initial teachers came from? And the answer to that is a resounding yes. But apparently this is, like I said, controversial. And I wonder why. Because our ancestors were very, very clear that they came from the Pleiades, Orion, and the Pleiades. I mean, it's very clear, as above, so below. They wanted to create those places of origin, whether it was with the help of the extraterrestrials or not. It doesn't even matter anymore at this point. It doesn't matter. It means this is where they came from. I'm just trying to figure out which.
You're backwards.
Yeah,
you're backwards.
But so, it would be a different story if you had worldwide, hundreds of archaeological sites that are built in the constellations, and it's okay. And this culture loved that constellation, and so they built something, whatever, Cygnus. And then that constellation or that culture did something with Leo, or that something with Sagittarius. But the fact of the matter is that the great majority, only those three. And why? See, this is where this disconnect with the archaeologists does not make sense to me. Because if the archaeologists would read what the stories and the oral and written traditions that come with all these sites, is that the ancients are saying we did this because that is where they came from. But it's all fantasy, right? I mean,
yeah.
That to me, that's insulting, that our ancestors would go through all this trouble, the sweat and blood, and then for today's, the people in charge or whatever, to say, no, our ancestors didn't know what they were building and why they used that constellation. That to me is insulting. And again, I don't expect for archaeologists to agree with me. I don't, because it's too ridiculous of an argument to suggest, hey, by the way, yes, I love you forensic stuff, but also look at the oral and written documentation. It's a combination of everything. It cannot be isolated. It should all kind of, mingle together.
Now, okay, one last question. Last question to death. But here's when you go to, a lot has been said about this. Okay, yeah. But when you go to Aswan and you stand at the side of the unfinished obelisk, you can think whatever you want to think. But this is what I thought. I backed up and said, okay, but what was your plan? Right? What was the plan? You had a plan here. This was going to get lifted out of here, which is crazy enough just to think about, but then taken. So what was the plan? You can carve all you want. And even that is crazy. But what was the plan? How were you? Who was the guy that had the plan? Right? That's the insane part. We don't have anything. There's nothing on this planet today. There is nothing that could move that. So what was their plan? What do you think?
Right. And so, unfortunately, that thing cracked. And you have to then also wonder, what made it crack. And personally, I think that it may have been the weight. But if you believe what we are told, that, this thing is still apparently, no, and it is. I mean, we've all walked around it. It's still attached to the bedrock. So they never were able to cut it out or carve it out from the bottom. Well, then, that crack, in my opinion, could have only happened if it was already kind of freed from the bottom, and then one side was a bit too heavy, and therefore it just it just broke. But that is, it still does not explain away, because clearly they were doing that because they knew that they could lift it, because they've done it with other obelisks that are, a little bit smaller, but still massive. And in fact, if anybody says, well, that's never been done before, they're wrong. Because if you only travel a few hundred miles further south from Egypt to Aksum, Ethiopia, there are some of the largest monoliths that have ever been created exist right there. And they have been standing upright, and they tumbled over, and that is why they're broken. And some of those broken pieces are as big as a one-story building. I mean, huge. And it was upright at one point. The giant broken menhir in Standing Stone in French Brittany in Karnak, too. We have one of the largest standing stones that was ever created by Stone Age people, and then some cataclysm or whatever, or maybe there was an earthquake that toppled it over. But you stand next to that, and it's a 1-story, 2-story building.
The one outside of Luxor. You walk up to that, right, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. You walk up to that, and you see the width. And you see the height of that, you just step back and go, okay, how? Somebody just explain that.
And that is one piece. Also, a lot of the columns, for example, in Luxor at the Ramesseum, I mean, those are massive, massive columns, one piece. And some of them, yes, are stacked on top of each other, but the drums themselves that they stacked on top of each other, we're not talking, a couple of tons. We're talking, multiple tons. And so, again, this is not something easy. So like my colleague David Childress always has said, it had to have been easy. How easy? Well, they did it. And they did it not just once. They did it over and over again. And so, and when you read the ancient Egyptian texts, they always refer to the same thing, that the so-called guardians of the sky, or the watchers, helped the ancient Egyptians. Of course, it was the ancient Egyptians who built the pyramids. Of course, it was the ancient Egyptians who erected those obelisks and created those massive structures and everything. But they also say that the knowledge was imparted to them by the so-called guardians of the sky. And to say that was just a way to illustrate to the people of Egypt or to the rest of the world that that's how it was done, that to me is insulting the intellect of the ancient Egyptians by us, not us, the three of us and the audience, but the mainstream, to at least peripherally look at this and think, well, maybe there is something there. Maybe all these stories of ancient gods did not originate just in a vacuum, but there had to have been some sort of a physical inspiration. Because if it were all just, made out of thin air, is that compelling enough? I don't think so.
No.
There had to have been, somebody there that was physically there to inspire people, because otherwise, why would you do it? That's the other thing to me.
Yeah. I brought up Puma Punka at the beginning of the show, and when I walk through those gates, right, it's pretty cool too. It's just a chain link, and it says Puma Punka. I thought of you, man. I really did. It was that important to me. But let me back up and ask about who is important to you, and that is Erich von Daniken. When I flew over, I was not prepared. I was not. When I flew over the Nazca lines and I did this whole extended thing, I was up there for like 2 hours in the plane and I filmed everything. I was not prepared for the ginormity and the size of that. You think you are? You think you've got? No, you don't. You do not get how big that it's horizon to horizon on all sides. But all I heard as I looked out of the plane was the theme music from Chariots of the Gods. Right.
Right.
And I hear the theme. It was that important to me. And Erich von Daniken changed the world, and my emotions of looking out the window and filming this and seeing it. I just constantly went back and was thanking Erich in my head. How important is Erich to you?
Well, there are two people in my life that have changed my life, and that is Erich von Daniken and Kevin Burns of Prometheus. I mean, Erich wrote Chariots of the Gods, and I remember, when I was a little kid, I had family members, my mom and my grandma, reading Chariots to me and other books in that realm. And then when I was 14, 15, I rediscovered the books by Erich von Daniken, and I was blown away, immediately hooked. I started to go to his lectures. And then when we became friends, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, it was, and he took me under his wing to study under him, to travel to different places with him. And, we've had many, many late night conversations about these topics. And I knew that, that there was something there. And then when Kevin came along and said he wanted to write a love letter to Erich von Daniken with the first standalone documentary, Ancient Aliens, that we've ever done. When Ancient Aliens began, or the first episode that we did, that was not the first episode. That was a 2-hour standalone special. And, we all thought that we had reached the height of our career. It can't get any better. And then, 6 months later, the phone rings and it's Kevin Burns. And he says, "Hey, buddy, are you sitting down? Because this never happens. But you've just been approved for season 1 of Ancient Aliens. And you better promise me that you've got more pyramids to talk about." I was like, yes, not only do we have more pyramids to talk about, but we have other topics that are all part of the ancient astronaut theory. And so, Kevin Burns and Erich von Daniken, they have changed my life, and I will never forget. And I am forever indebted to Prometheus Entertainment, who, after Kevin's death it's in this September, it'll be 4 years since Kevin died. And the fact that Prometheus and everyone there, the production team, has continued Ancient Aliens only also speaks to that we are carrying the torch of Prometheus. And I know there's one guy up there, looking down on us with a giant smile, and that's Kevin Burns. Because the other thing that he did not see at all, for example, is that currently I'm traveling or crisscrossing the United States with David Childress, with Nick Pope, with William Henry on this roadshow called Ancient Aliens Live. I mean, this was something that none of us had dreamed about 10 years ago. And so the fact that people come out to see us and sold out venues on a Wednesday night, a Thursday night, only indicates that, yes, we have struck a chord with audiences worldwide, and they have stuck with us. And so, I still, and I'm just going to say this because it's true, I still pinch myself and I know you do this too, Jimmy, that, we get to work in a playground, in a sandbox that is incredible. And that sandbox exists because, of all the people that are contributing to the field. And that includes the archaeologists, but again, like I said earlier, our interpretation is just a bit different.
I'm so glad you say that about Erich, because I had the honor and the privilege, you're going to laugh at this, to be like his first guest on his podcast, right? So, I get the email from Ramon, Jimmy, would you? I was like, would I? Let's go,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and you remember that. Anyway, so Erich's first question to me is, so I'm not going to imitate Erich, but he says, so Jimmy, how did you get into this? I go, how did I? You, man, it's you. you have to recognize, really, and I took the time to tell Erich, which he has heard many, many, many times before, but he inspired so many. And it was my parents, like you were just saying, right? Your grandmother and so that introduced me to this world at a very young age. And it was Erich that just opened up my mind and allowed me to just question stuff. That's all. Just move along, go on this journey, and get behind the facts, and somehow find your own answers and get to the truth. And I'll give credit where credit's
that is,
due.
That's what it's really all about, because Erich will be the first one to say that many of those things that he says, he did not pull it out of thin air. It's not Erich's theories. And every book that you can read by Erich, especially the most recent, 15 books that he's written. He's written 30 books in total, plus. But if you look at the back, there is a source list. There's a reference list, and in the text there are numbers that correspond with the index and the books and the reference list that's on the back of the books. So anybody that wants to go and see, well, where did he get that from? He provides the reference. So to say that, oh, this is not true, that is dishonest, because he actually shows you or gives you the reference list of where he gleaned or where he collected this knowledge. And especially also, the stuff that we present on Ancient Aliens, you can look that up. Often we show screenshots of the scientific papers that were written about the topics that we're covering and things like that. So, a lot of the stuff that we present on Ancient Aliens, or that he has presented on in his books, are not hearsay. We bring the receipts. Now, whether you agree with the receipts or not my problem. Not my problem at all. But it's there. Whether you agree with it or not.
I remember you and I and Erich. We were sitting outside one night, late into the night, with Ramon, and I asked Erich. Now, he has said this before publicly, but when you hear him say this, so I said, okay, so Erich, where did you get your ideas? And Erich said, and you remember this, he goes, oh, you are the funny guy, aren't you? You're always the funny guy. I said, it's not that. I'm not trying to be funny. Where did this come from? And Erich said, he goes, I translated the Bible when I was a kid. And you remember that, right? We were sitting there.
Well, he had to. It was part of his education, and it was in religious studies. And back in the day, not only was it mandatory for you to learn Latin, but also ancient Greek. And so one of the exercises or homework was during that whole school year, or multiple school years, is to translate biblical verses in ancient Greek, from ancient Greek to Latin, and from Latin to German, and vice versa. And so he was so lucky. So he went to a all boys Jesuit school boarding school in the French part of Switzerland. And so, too, by the way, he had to learn French for this too when he went to that boarding school. And so,
Right.
a lot of languages were and still are floating in his head. And so, he was so lucky to have had a Jesuit priest as his religious study teacher, who actually encouraged him when Erich approached him. Hey, so teacher, riddle me this. Why are the translations like this? And if we really want to translate correctly, then, it doesn't necessarily talk about God, but it talks about the Most High. That is the ancient, real translation of when they talk about God in the Old Testament. It was never God. It was the Most High. That is the correct translation. And so when Erich asked, well, why aren't they calling it God? Why the Most High? And who is that? The professor or his religious studies teacher didn't just, pat him on the back or on his forehead and said, oh, no, nonsense. Don't ask these questions. On the contrary, he would give Erich more books to read, and he would say, maybe you find more of your questions or answers to your questions in here. And so Erich's intellect was already fostered in boarding school as a young man, between 14 and 16, by a Jesuit priest who saw the fire in Erich's eyes and did not stymie his, wanting to have an exploration of what the ancient texts might have really said. And so to this day, he actually attributes not just the translations, but then also having been encouraged by this Jesuit priest. And, that was in the 50s. So this is something that we should all be we have to think that times were different back then. That, that was essentially heretical what that Jesuit priest did, but he didn't care. He did
No,
it. And that
no,
is the
Erich.
right thing to do.
Yeah, Erich said, I'm translating these texts, man, and it just didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any
Yeah,
sense.
no, he also said, one of the things that really bothered him, one of the passages was when the Bible, the Old Testament talks about that at one point there was a war in heaven. And I agree with him. What a contradiction. Why should there be a war in heaven? Isn't heaven paradise? Isn't heaven perfect? So his immediate thought process was, well, if there was a war in heaven, then most likely we're talking about something else here. We're talking about, misunderstood technology, a misunderstood period of our ancient legendary times. And luckily enough, at that school that Erich was, when these thoughts started to percolate in young Erich's mind, he was not shut down. He had at least one encouraging voice during his upbringing, in junior high and in high school. So very important and frankly beautiful. We should all be so lucky to have had teachers that encourage you and not just say, well, no, don't ask these questions because that's not how it is. Well, says who? If a young kid wants to explore something, the last thing you should do is stymie them or shut them down. If they want to learn more, here's more books, here's more links, more videos that you can read or you can watch. Expand your mind. Always expand your mind. The moment that anybody agrees that we know everything and that there are no new questions to old answers, we're toast. We're done.
Giorgio, thank you so much, man. I know you got to catch a plane. I could do this all night with you, and you already know that. Just thank you so much. And do you ever see? Is there an end to the questions, or is it something? Could ancient aliens just run like a perpetual motion machine?
Well, that is not up to me. That is up to the audience, the watchers. As long as as they tune in, we have a show. But at the same time, you see, now here we are, 15 years in. The first show aired in 2009. And guess what? We are revisiting old topics because 15 years is a long time, and new research has been done or has been conducted into some of these older topics. So we are now presenting the newest evidence to questions or ideas that we presented 15 years ago. So things do change. But at the same time, I think that time is on our side, because a lot of the things that we speculated about have come true. I mean, we've had in the first 2 seasons of Ancient Aliens, we talked about undiscovered chambers that could potentially be found in ancient sites. And sure enough, in 2018, well, it was in 2017, we shot it in 2018, but in 2017, Dr. Giulio Magli, the famed Italian archaeoastronomer, was the one that discovered that giant chamber above the King's Chamber inside the Great Pyramid, where we've said since the 1980s that there are other chambers, large chambers inside the Great Pyramid. No, no, no. This is all conspiracy. No, no, no. This is not true. And here we are, and we found, or they have found, another King's Chamber above the King's Chamber. And
2 chambers that you remember. Zahi, I'm not bragging on Zahi, but he's the most quotable, right? There is nothing left to find in the Great Pyramid. Well,
yeah, and you know, and that by the way, should not, you know, make any of us outrageous. On the contrary, it should make all of us, that especially the people that are in this, you know, alternative field, it should give us joy. It should give us happiness, because clearly another example where they're wrong. And so, you know, again, this stuff takes time. It takes patience. Remember patience? Everybody seems to have forgotten patience, and they want all the results now. Well, that's not how it works. You know, people's minds need to be changed, and that takes a long time. And by the way, everybody is on their own time schedule. This is why personally I have stopped engaging or fighting with the critics and the skeptics, because what are they going to do? I mean, you know, they've been yelling for the past 15 years against Ancient Aliens. They have yelled against other people. They've yelled at Erich since the 70s, you know, and so that's just what they do. That is their thing. And, you know, like water.
Yeah. If they only knew, if those critics could have sat with us at our table at dinner, where we are not bitter, we are 2 happy people with no negativity around us, enjoying a wonderful meal, and enjoying the food and talking about positive things about the world and about life. We're not walking around with a chip on our shoulder. They want us. They think that we are doing that, but that's not the case, is it? It's simply not what we're about.
Well, why? Life is too short, and just because somebody disagrees with us, that's okay. That's okay. Like I said, I used to engage and whatever, but you know, this is why you and I look so young, Jimmy. That's why we don't engage.
Hey man, enjoy your trip. Give my best to the family, please. And
thank you.
And everything else. And I look forward to our next conversation. Hopefully the next time I call, which will be soon, you'll pick up the
it's
phone.
always a pleasure to be on your show. And by the way, anybody that wants to go out there and join us on tour with Ancient Aliens Live, we're going to be this fall. We're going to start in September 19th. We're in Dallas, Texas, and then we go to San Antonio, Texas, Houston, Texas, New Orleans, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Clearwater, Nashville, Indiana, Peoria, Waukegan, and Appleton, Wisconsin. So we're doing 11 shows this fall. And so I would love for all you Fadernauts to come out and to support us. It would be great.
You
and
rock.
Tickets, by the way, tickets can be found at ancientaliensLiveTour.com. So thank you so much for coming out to see us.
Yeah, Bill and everybody, get that up in the chat room for us. And Jessica, thank you so much for that. I was born in Waukegan. I was born in Waukegan, Illinois.
We're going to go to the Genesee Theater.
I have no idea, but I was still born there.
All right. Awesome.
Safe travels, Giorgio. I love you, brother. Man. Thank you so much.
See you around. Thank you for everything.
You're the best. Giorgio Tsoukalos, everybody. Now, as you can see, I blew through the commercial. I'm going to get to that in a second. And ancientalienslive.com. We've got the links up in the chat. Thank you for that. legendarytimes.com. And also, of course, History Channel. And the links for that are below. I'm going to bang through a quick commercial, and I'll be right back. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I want to invite you to come to Alaska with me on the Contact at Sea cruise. It is this September 6th through the 13th, 2024. We are on the largest ship in the Pacific Ocean. That's right, the Ovation of the Seas. It's an amazing cruise, and a ship this big is so much fun. We've got lots of activities and lots of great speakers. We are leaving from Seattle to Sitka, Alaska, Skagway, Juneau. We're going to end the cruise in Victoria, BC, and arrive in Seattle on September 13th. We've got a lot of amazing speakers, including we've got Seth Showstack, Scott Walter, Stephen Bassett, Daniel Sheehan, Daryl Sims, Mas Adi, Vivian Chavez, Grant Cameron, Geraldine Orozco, Misha Johnston, and Melanie Aguirre, and a whole lot more. All you have to do is go to divinetravels.com. You can also go to contactatsea.com. Both are going to take you to a full event schedule. You can check in, look at the boat, get things ready to go, and maybe get a cabin with a balcony. That's what I'm talking about. Come see the whales. Come check it all out. Let's go to Alaska this September 6th through the 13th, 2024 with me, Jimmy Church. Now, when you head to divinetravels.com or contactatsea.com and get signed up, you know what? Use my name, Jimmy Church. I'll see you there September 6th through the 13th, 2024. Let's go to Alaska. This is Jimmy Church. Please visit and explore Egypt this October 3rd through the 14th, 2024 with Billy, Elizabeth, myself, and very special guest and the #1 podcaster in the world, Sean Kelly. It's simple to do. Just go to forbiddenknowledge.com and click on upcoming tours, or click on the link below. We'll see you there. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's fade to black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black T-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 T-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black T-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I want to thank Giorgio for coming in tonight and an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Giorgio. But I wanted to say in closing, before I get out of here, about these sightings that are all over social media right now that have been reported, and the videotapes, the video that is out over Palmdale and reportedly Lancaster and Edwards Air Force Base. Last week, I went out to look at the meteor shower that was happening after the show, and I went out and I saw the meteors, and and that was pretty exciting. But then I saw this craft that was literally behind and above my house, acting a little bit strange. I was looking for meteors, right? So I've got my night vision, I've got my binoculars and stuff, and I'm out there. And what caught my eye with this particular, I thought it was an airplane because there were 3 white flashing lights on it. So I thought it was navigation lights. But then as I just kind of looked at it, and it stopped and then changed directions and went back. It was going this way, stopped, and then turned around and went back. So I thought it was like a helicopter, but I couldn't hear anything. And it was right above me. Very low, by the way. I'm going to say 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet tops, very low. And it was big. And then, so that caught my attention, but I didn't hear anything. No engines, nothing. It was completely silent. And I watched it go back and then stop and then come at me at then it started to like do this zigzag pattern in the sky, but it was only staying in this box that was like coming up to the edge of my house and then back over Lockheed Skunk Works. And it's coming back and it's going here and it's going here and it's going. And twice, it may have been more, but specifically, I remember twice, I was hoping it would like come over me, and it came right up, right above me, and I got a really good, clear look at it. I couldn't see a shape, but what I did see were the three perfect, like equidistant, flashing white lights. Beep, 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 beep. They were, going in this triangle, and then it changed around, and then it went back, and then went over, and I stood out there for about 30 minutes watching this. Now, let me just say this. I ended up getting bored and going in the house. And the reason why it didn't land. I didn't see any beams of light. I didn't see any, it didn't take off into the stars. It wasn't fast. It was slow. But it lasted for a very long time. And now I came on the air the next night and I spoke about it. But what I don't like to do, now I assumed that it was the testing of some technology, some aircraft. Okay. I'm not saying it's UFOs. I'm not. But it was not making any noise. It was acting very strangely. And again, staying in this area directly above Skunk Works. I'm only a mile away from Skunk Works. So, and it was just coming very close to me. But anyway, I didn't think UFOs. And I live here. I saw it with my own eyes, and I talked about it the next night. Now it's all over the internet, and there was 6 craft, and there was this, and I've seen the other stuff. No, that's not. And I'm out there every night. This was not over Edwards. I can see Edwards from my house. Edwards is a long distance away. No, this happened directly over Skunk Works, right in this area, right behind my home. And there wasn't 6, there was 1. There was 1. And now, every night I'm out there. Every night I'm out there. I've got my night vision. I'm looking because I see stuff. But what I don't want to do is come on the air and give a specific time and date of this stuff that I see going on, because it's telling our adversaries what's going on here. And I'm not going to be that guy in Palmdale that is giving away government secrets. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what it was. I don't know. But it was silent and it was obvious, and it was something being tested up there. But I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be known. I'm known in this community. I don't want to be known here as somebody that's giving away secrets. There are people here that work very hard. There are engineers, there are families, there is a community that is here, and I'm not just going to do that. Now, these videos that have been posted in social media, I have seen some of the comments out there, and people have sent it to me that this is what Jimmy Church saw. That is not what I saw. And so I'm not sure if those videos were CG, if they're computer graphics and computer generate. I don't know. Maybe somebody saw something else at another location, but I have not seen any of that. Those videos are not what I saw. What I saw had 3 white lights in a triangular, perfect, equidistant, triangular thing underneath. Now, I'm not saying it's TR3B. I don't know. I didn't see it, the shape of it, but it was definitely 3 equidistant blinking lights underneath, blinking. No red lights, no green lights, no blue lights, nothing like that. Like the video. No, that's not what I saw. So when anybody says anything like that in social media, that this is what I saw and I'm back, no, absolutely not. If you go back and you listen to the show last week when I talked about this for the first time, I said the same thing then that I am saying now. It was right over Lockheed. It was like a 1 square mile, 2 square mile box in the sky, and it was staying inside of that. And it was 3 equidistant, blinking in a triangle formation, white lights. It was silent. It was zigzagging. It was going backwards on itself and reversing directions. It was doing all of that. It was bizarre to see. But that's it. There's nothing else. From my perspective, you cannot put my name on something that I did not see. That's what I saw, and I want to be very clear with that. Tomorrow night on the show, we have Joseph Selby with us. We're going to be talking about the Yugas. All right, it's going to be a fantastic show. So I'll see everybody tomorrow night. Until then, all I've got is go Backley Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go Backley Tappy.